Vice Principal and IQS Coordinator, Dr. Lijit. Our Vice Principal, Professor Sandesh Shetty. BMM Coordinator, Professor Kalpana Roy Menon. All teachers and my dear students. At the very outset, I appreciate the initiative taken by IQAC coordinator for arranging this session. As Dr. Liji Santosh rightly said, right from the beginning, we follow secularism. We follow what's called as inclusive education right from the beginning. We have more than 2,500 students on roll. All are equal. There's no discrimination. There's no discrimination language-wise, region-wise, gender-wise, etc. But now, considering the present situation, I think the topic of discussion today is quite relevant and appropriate. There is a need for a greater orientation to the teachers as well as to the students. Therefore, that discrimination we can overcome, and LGBTQ, this inclusion can be established in our college. This LGBTQ is an umbrella word. Covers everything. But we need some kind of orientation. And if you get the orientation from some expertise, definitely we can orient to our students from the next academic year during the Diksharam itself. Therefore, that kind of discrimination can be avoided. For example, what type of training we need, or what kind of orientation we need to treat these students. I think even the language which we are going to use, I think we should be very, very careful, and such a language should also be, I think it should be gender neutral. So therefore, in the present day context, for the inclusion of LGBTQ perspective, I think we need an orientation program. We have to learn the things. We have to pass on to our students. Therefore, I think our environment, our college environment would become safe, comfortable, and secure for all the students. Sir, this is our priority. With this, I am really happy to extend a cordial welcome to our guest today, to Pallav Patinkar, to our vice principals, Dr. Liji Santosh and Sandesh Shetty, the BMM coordinator, Kalpana Roy Menon, other teachers and other students. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We would love to know more about sir from Kalpana's words. I welcome Kalpana Roy Menon to introduce our guest, Pallav Patinkar.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm really honored to bring to you a brief profile of Pallav Patinkar, sir. He is introduced to me by a close friend of mine, Mr. Imran Sheikh, who's a common friend. And when I told him that I wanted a resource person, he's like, Pallav is the best person, and he can really relate to the students, and that is it would really solve your issue. So I'll just read a little bit about Pallavji. Though he's done a lot, he's been instrumental in many activities here. So to begin with, he is the director strategizing digital health interventions for HIV, TB, maternal health, and NCD. He is he's a former director program at Humsafar Trust. devising and implementation of resource mobilization strategies with corporate institutions through CSR and DNI initiatives. He's had 21 years of sales and marketing experience post an MBA from SP Jain Institute of Management Research. He's a double gold medalist in MSc Biotechnology from Magurai Kamraj University. He is also a fellow of Indian Class 5 of the Anant Aspen Kamlayan Bajaj Scholarship of the Aspen Global Leadership Network in 2016. He has got an honorary position on the Committee of NGOs, Corporates and Educational Institutions. He has been working with Mission Azadi, which is advocacy. He has worked on these projects, that is Mission Azadi, Advocacy Referral Manual for LGBTQ rights in India, legal support to LGBT groups in India, Pride Publication Mumbai, consulting sales and marketing, that's Bombay Dost. And he's worked on documenting growth of community collectivization and mobilization among sexual minority groups in India under the UNDP. Under the Humsafar Trust, he was the program director, and he has looked at he's been involved in the management overview of HIV meeting at different levels and with the different state organizations. He's been the convener of the Community Advisory Board for taking community decisions on HIV projects, interacting with state government machinery. Sorry, I think I got disconnected there. Yeah, so he's also worked on consulting projects, documenting growth of community collectivization and mobilization among sexual minority groups in India under the UNDP program. He's been part of the legal support to LGBT groups in India and many more. I think he will be the best person to tell us in details about his journey and how the students could benefit from having a great understanding of this particular topic. So thank you. That's from me.
Thank you so much, Kalpana. This is actually a mesmerizing achievement. All you have actually ported it out. Now we are eager to hear from Pallav Patankarji, and it's an honor to invite you for the talk, sir. Pallav Patankarji, all over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay. So yeah, I didn't realize there was so much written on my CV, but anyway, long story short, I think if I were to speak to the students today, I mean, I don't think this journey started very easy. You know, I mean, if I were to remember when I put myself in your positions in school, I was a very competitive child. I was topping class. I was amongst the top 5 students in school. I was the head boy when I passed out of St. Stanislaus High School when I was in Bandra. And then, of course, I went to, I did very well. So I went into DG Ruparel College for Science to pursue either medicine or engineering as all competitive kids in India are supposed to do. And what happened to me at that point in time is adolescent hits you, you know, and just we start changing our you know, our physiology, our bodies, our minds start changing, you know, and that's when I started realizing that, you know, I could not relate to a lot of what the other kids were talking about. I mean, and a lot of boys start showing interest in girls, you know, or you are attracted towards the opposite sex. But I did not have those same issues. I was being attracted to the same to other men, and of course, this is 1990s. Typically what happens in such situations is you start feeling differently about yourself. I mean, your confidence levels or how you feel about what you can achieve in life can sometimes be determined by people around you or what is the social narrative at that point in time. And that was something that troubled me at out there. But before we go into further discussions, you know, about my life, I just want to set certain narratives straight in terms of, you know, we use the words LGBTQ, and we use the words gender, and we need to kind of understand first in my language as I use that, what are the meaning of these things, right? So let's go into that alphabet soup which we have. We have LGBTQ, and sometimes H, and sometimes I, and sometimes A, which is coming. L stands for lesbian, and I'll come to the discussion of each. B stands for bisexual. G stands for gay. T stands for transgender. Q stands for queer, and we'll come to what that means. I stands for intersex, and A stands for asexual. Now, when we say LGBTQ, it is sexual orientation, which means and it is determined by whom am I attracted to, right? So if as a woman I'm attracted to a woman, I would term the person as lesbian. If the person is attracted towards both men and women, you would say bisexual. Then gay men would typically be men who are attracted towards men. Now we come to transgender, and let's keep that on hold for a while. You also use the term intersex, and then you use the word asexual. Now let's come to gender. Sexual orientation is different from gender, because gender is what you perceive yourself to be, in terms of whether you perceive yourself to be a man or whether you perceive yourself to be a woman. And this can be a little confusing or disturbing to some people, but don't worry about it. It is not, it is just to set the scientific discussion alive and not get into. So you use now a lot of words such as gender, right? So gender is not necessarily biological gender, because I could be born a man, but my self-perception of who I am could be that I'm a woman. In which case, if my biological gender and my self-perception do not match, then I will call myself transgender. So I could be born a man and I could think of myself as a woman, in which case I'm transgender. Or I could be born a woman and I could think of myself as a man, or I see my gender as a man, and I could yet be transgender. So let us distinguish gender from sexual orientation, which is somebody I'm attracted to. Right? And gender is the way I self-perceive myself in terms of whether I am. So if I am a man and I think of myself as a man, I will be called cisgendered, which means, what I perceive and what I am biologically match. If they don't, then I would be transgendered. So let us keep these nuances in mind. But today the discussion is about a larger topic. It is about probably discussing about, the issues around gender sexuality. So let's come back to my story. So I was in 11th, 12th, and here I am in a very competitive place, and really trying hard to be that doctor or engineer. But then I have this issue about me not being comfortable with my sexuality. And my question mark to me at that point in time was, do people who are gay, or are people who are lesbian, or LGBTQ, as I spoke, can they become doctors or can they become engineers? Now, the problem that happened is, in the 90s, there were no role models for us. There were no movies which were showing gay men or, lesbian women or anyone becoming doctors. What was it? It was a joke, right? For most people, it was a joking matter. And if it used to be the joke in a lot of the Hindi movies. And at the end of the day, one questioned one's whole identity and ability to perform because of one's sexuality. And that, when you are adolescent, when you are in your 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, can be a very difficult time, because you do not know where you are going to go. But let me tell you, all the kids out there, and you can see from what Kalpana read out, I went on to do fine. The question is, how do you delink your identity or these issues with your capability, right? You are not less intelligent, you're not less capable, you're not less, able to achieve what you wish to achieve, because you're different. And now that may not necessarily just be about being LGBTQ. That is true for any other thing. It could be disability. It could probably be the way you look, whether you are short, thin, fat. It's about ability. And sometimes what we face is not actual disability, it is social disability. It is because of the way society is not sensitized to a particular issue, right? And sometimes your ability is determined by the way society looks at that particular issue, right? We try very hard to, like Sir Shetty was saying, is We don't want discrimination. We want this to be a secular, clean environment where everyone is able to get ahead on basis of their hard work, their intelligence, their capability, and issues such as maybe LGBTQ become social disabilities in the way we are able to achieve those. Now, in the 12th standard, unfortunately, my grades went down. I could not get the right marks to get into medical school. And for me, that was a big defeat because I always wanted to be a doctor. And I asked myself whether what I should be doing, because I thought that's what I wanted to be. And I felt, no, doctors do, I mean, gay men don't become doctors. But I was very, very wrong. Then after that, I went to Xavier's to study life sciences, biochemistry, and I did very well. I topped the university at the end of it, but there was a process. I reached out to an organization called Bombay Dost at that point in 90s. It was just starting out, and I knew one person who had come out as a gay man in the 90s, Mr. Ashok Kavi. And I reached out to that organization, and then they counseled me. And when I was counseled, I realized that in this whole space, there were many men, women who had achieved their success. They were doing very well. They were doctors, engineers, architects, nothing. Their sexuality did not come in the way of what they could achieve or what they could do. But yes, they were what you call in the closet. They didn't disclose their gender or their sexuality to people because of the fear of social stigma which came their way. And that's when it hit me that, a lot of my inability to perform in the last 1 year was because of the self stigma which I heaped on myself. It was not because I was not capable of achieving that. And the reason that I am telling you this as a story is for a lot of the kids right now who are in the school going age, they are going through this process. Some amongst you may be from the LGBTQ community, and some of you may be friends to these people who are from the LGBTQ community. So what is the message that I have for the children or the adolescent, and for even the teachers and the counselors who are there? One is, if you are from within the community, what I'd like to tell you right now, if you're lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, is this is not going to be in any way, come in the way of your progress. You will achieve what you wish to achieve, provided you are able to come at terms and peace with yourself. How do you do that? If you are uncomfortable, if you don't feel you are in a position to deal with these issues, reach out to your counselors, reach out to your teachers, or even your friends who are close friends to you, and learn to discuss these issues slowly. People whom you trust. Ideally, it should be with a counselor or with somebody who can put you in the right resources so that you are able to deal with your discomfort, if any, at this point in time. If you're a friend to somebody who's from the LGBTQI community, be their support. Learn how to deal with, how to put them in touch with the counselors so that they get right counseling support, so that their education and their further development does not suffer. And then comes to the third part, is this is the time when typically in schools and colleges and all the way up to your graduation and maybe even in the corporate sector, you will encounter bullying. And bullying ends up becoming one of the other problems that faces faced by not just the LGBT community, but yes, maybe in a disproportionate way. People who are fat, short, thin, fat, everyone gets bullied in school. That's how the structure is. We need to fight that. But LGBTQI also get further bullied, especially if you stand out within the whole community. How do you address bullying? And here is when you will need that counseling support. You will need to stand up to bullying because that is important for you. You will need your allies, your friends who will be your friends, who will stand up to people who will bully you. And I got bullied a lot, though I was a head boy in school and etc. I used to get bullied, but because I had my friends and because I was counseled correctly, I could stand up to bullies and I could tell them off, and I could use my intelligence, or I could use my courage to tell them off, and keep them away. But it takes effort, and this becomes extremely important because at some point in time, this conversation needs to also happen with parents. Parents need to be kept aware of the child's development, and the counselors or the allies will help you in having that conversation with parents, because once that happens, a larger conversation with parents happens. As I had with my mother when I was 21, 22, and my mother obviously started talking about marriage and, getting married to a woman and stuff like that. And I could not lie to her. I was also being raised by a single mother. I had lost my father when I was 11 years old. So the need to be honest to my mother was extremely high. I didn't want to keep her in the dark. So I did have to have a very difficult conversation with my mother in explaining that marriage is not going to happen, because in the current legal system, I cannot get married to a man, but at the same time, I cannot be dishonest in marrying a woman. And that was a very clear personal decision that I will not be in a false relationship. And I did have that discussion, and I'm very happy I did, because my mother today respects the fact that I took that decision and I was honest with my life. Uh,
Thank you
it
very much.
has it has sorted out things for me. I am out to the family and to the people I am at home. They respect me for my honesty and being, upright in my value system, which I had. I have nephews who are now, 25 and 26, who respect me too, and I can have a very open conversation about these issues with me. And I think that becomes extremely essential in addressing these issues. Having said that, I think in a way I'm yet privileged, because I'm a gay man. I have lesser issues. I think women in our country, especially lesbian women, tend to have larger issues. A, because they are women, and B, because people don't understand that women can have a different sexuality, or can probably also choose not to have a man in their life, can probably not want to get married. So that becomes an issue. Usually in India, women end up being forced to be married by a certain age, and lesbian women would probably not want to do that. Transgender women or transgender men have other issues. It is about identity, right? I mean, in the sense that I have my certificates and everything which say that I am male, but let's assume for now that I was transgender and I was going to transition into being a woman at some point in time. Imagine the problems that I will have in terms of documentation, changing legal status, changing my certificates, changing my name. It's a longer process, right? But if you have the right advice, right counseling, and the right people who are going to guide you, nothing is going to be difficult. But yes, I do have to say that it is a longer and a longer process. So having said that, if I were to kind of sum this up, and I would be happy to take more questions if people would like to have more questions, because I want this to be a little interactive and not one way. I think the time and the need of the hour is a sensitization of teachers as well as counselors, and if there are sessions which can give you a more detailed instruction about how this whole thing is structured, we'd be more than happy to kind of explain that to you. And second is a detailed introduction of these topics to the counselors. So if children who do come or to the counselors or do explain these issues, they know how to exactly handle these issues, how parental consent and how parents can be kept informed of their child's development, and B, how the child's education and development does not get affected. This is extremely essential in the space. And yes, if a child does require further counseling and further help, they know the exact counselors and the people whom they can talk to, and also refer to role models if they need to have that information. With that, I'm going to stop, and I'm open to more questions. If you want any specific questions that need to be answered, I'll be more than happy to. Dr. Santosh, it would be great if you can moderate any questions that are coming in. People may be hesitant to ask me questions, and I know this is probably a new topic for a lot of people, but I'd be happy to take on the question.
Can I start with the question? Heji ma'am?
Sure, Kalpana, more than happy to.
Okay. Yeah. So, like when I was introducing you myself, I was, I didn't know which pronoun to use. So I think that is something that everybody fumbles over. Could you just tell us
Correct.
like what is
So
what and how do?
Correct. So I think that's a very good thing, because if you today you go on LinkedIn or anything, you will see people putting
Yeah,
he,
yeah.
whatever.
Mm.
So like I explained to you the concept of transgender, right? You can be cisgendered or you can be transgendered. So I am Pallav Patankar. If you look at me, I look like a man, but I may not necessarily think of myself as a man. I may self-perceive myself as a woman, right? So in which case I may be transgender. So what you basically do is you have now this new concept which is called breaking the binary, that everyone is not necessarily in the whole concept of masculine feminine. You have somebody who does not necessarily think of themselves as either masculine or feminine, so you are creating a space of expressing gender in many ways. But you can be cisgendered, that if I am a man and I look like a man, then I will say I'm a cisgendered man and I'll give the pronouns he, him, right? Those are my pronouns. But if I am, and if I'm a woman and I perceive myself as a woman, I'll give my pronouns as she, her. But if I am a man and I perceive myself as a woman, I can state my pronouns that I'd like to be referred to as she or her, but that's my choice. Or sometimes you don't want to be either man or woman, in which case some people would like to define their pronouns as they, them, which is neither masculine nor feminine, in which case it is a neutral gender altogether, right? Because then they, them becomes neither masculine nor feminine, and you don't want to identify either being male or female. You want to be undefined in terms of what your gender is, right? And this is something which is catching on in India. In the West, it is already something which is understood, and it is in a way, respecting someone's gender. So if somebody has announced themselves as they, them, he, him, she, one is expected to use those gender pronouns to respect their wishes. That is the whole concept.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Make your students to actually put the questions in the chat box.
I would be happy to answer the students, and don't be shy. It doesn't mean asking a question about this. I know that way students think. Students think, oh, I'm going to be asked a question, then somebody's going to ask me, why did you ask this question? So I think you should use this forum to educate yourself. I'm sure in the future you are going to have friends and classmates and colleagues who will be from the LGBTQI community. You not only in India, but if let's assume you go abroad to study or you go any other place, you will have, and it is good to be informed, and to be, even if you were to go into corporate spaces today, you have the concept of diversity and inclusion, where you are having diverse and inclusive environments where you will have colleagues from the LGBTQI and other spaces, and it would be wise for you to know what is the culture. Like sir said, sometimes in our culture we do not know what are the terminologies of the words that you use. For example, we very in India we will use the word chakka for a transgender person, but chakka is a pejorative term. You'd never use that word. Then the more respectable term is the hijra community, which is a more accepted, relevant cultural term, right? So you have to be careful about terminology and the respectable words to be used, so that you are in the right professional space and in the right academic space in addressing these issues. I see a question. Okay, there are people who are putting things in chat. I will start answer what Q stands for. Yeah, so Q stands for queer, and sometimes people do not wish to identify either being lesbian, gay, bisexual. They may have, again, a definition of their sexuality which may not necessarily fit into LGB as well. So you tend to have a term called queer, which is just like they, them, where you have the freedom of expression. Q may stand for queer, where it does not fit into the standard definitions of being heterosexual. So you have the term called queer, and sometimes Q also stands for an umbrella term for the LGBTQ community, where you'll say queer people. So you'll have queer azadi, or you will have queer people. So you have, so it's a larger umbrella term which gets used. Then the next question is from someone called Surbhi, who says, what should be the first you need to keep in your mind before writing a report on event? I'm not exactly sure what
Yeah,
that
I
means.
think we can skip that. I'll read out the questions for you.
Okay.
We have the next one from a teacher, Professor Nidhi. She's asking, being a teacher, I would like to know what type of conversation to be avoided for better inclusion of all.
I think one of the things is it's good not to be prescriptive or to kind of because you don't know what the person is going through. Sometimes I think uh, in our conversations, or we tend to discourage inquisitivity, or we tend to discourage topics which are uncomfortable to us, such as gender or sexuality. And I feel that sometimes gives the wrong reaction to children, that discussing these topics or is not comfortable or is incorrect. But what happens is we are also giving children or adolescent people the message that don't come and discuss these things in school or with counselors. I think we need to keep a window or a conversation channel open for these conversations. Only we need to have a healthy way of addressing these conversations with counselors or with teachers, because I think it ends up becoming a lot of underlying level how children develop or how they will succeed in life if these conversations go unaddressed. So I just feel that having conversations which are preachy, or saying, defining what is good bad, or defining, rather saying that, rather than coloring those conversations, have a window of conversation open where you are approachable enough to be to address your issues around learning or growth or having these interpersonal issues. I think that would be a better way to kind of so instead of saying avoiding, I would rather say what should be there so that these conversations can happen. uh, and you should create that environment where a child feels comfortable to be able to approach and have that conversation with the teacher or the counselor, especially respecting the principles of confidentiality and respecting the principles that the child may say, I am ready to discuss this with you now, but I may not be able to discuss this with my classmates, or may not be able to discuss this with my parents as of now. But giving them the ability to discuss and see how they can improve their mental health or their state, or be able to have that conversation with their parents at some point in time. How were you able to do that? If you're going to be preachy, if you're going to be prescriptive, that's not going to happen. I will run away from a teacher or a counselor who's that way.
The next question is something similar to the first one that I asked. How do you deal with the situation wherein you accidentally use the wrong pronoun than what is preferred?
I think one should immediately apologize and say, I'm sorry, instead of trying to justify that. And just say that I didn't get that. And make an effort to remember the person's pronouns. I mean, and it happens to me also. I may have known somebody who is a man, and they may be going into transition, and they may be going into becoming a woman over a period of time. And then initially it takes me some time. I may call them he by mistake, but then I have to correct myself and say she, or I'll say sorry. It's because you cannot change, but so it's best to apologize. And but at the end of the day, what is most important is you need to be respectful, right? I mean, a person will immediately know by your tone, your body language, and the way you're addressing them whether the intent is respectful or disrespectful. And I think that becomes important.
There's another question here. How should one, from Sai Sharanya, how should one respond to homophobic and transphobic jokes? One might not put a lot of thought before making such a joke, but it can have a lot of effect.
So if a homophobic joke is made, in innocence, one can let it go and probably one can correct the narrative. Sometimes for me, people make homophobic jokes intentionally in front of me just to see what my reaction is going to be. So in that case, I laugh along with the joke because everything need not be serious. You know, we in India, we hear jokes about Sardarjis, we hear jokes about Babajis, we hear jokes about Maharashtrians, and we laugh along with them. I'm a Maharashtrian, I laugh for the intention is whether the joke is a joke or whether the joke is meant to be disrespectful, right? And you needn't lose your sense of humor. However, if a person is continuing to crack homophobic jokes time and again, time and again, time and again, then there is an issue where the narrative needs to be corrected. You need to 1 or 2 days probably laugh with the person, but the third day also tell the person the truth. Or if in my case, I'm a more aggressive person, so I usually can turn the homophobic joke on the person itself, and then put them in the same position to know what is it when, just like you're giving it, you should also know how to receive it, right? And make the person realize how a homophobic joke can also turn against them, and the person realizes that if the tables are turned, and I'm not going to I'm not going to set a bad example here by telling you how I can turn the tables. I don't want to teach you those skills. This is not the session for that. But sometimes you can turn the tables against a homophobic joke and make a person feel what it is to feel humiliated, right? But that is the last step I will do. If the person is not getting a sensitization first, then you follow the next technique of knowing even I can learn how to twist this around and make you feel. And the person sometimes realizes that, it is not a respectful thing to do, and people understand that. So I feel homophobia should also be treated from the fact that it comes sometimes out of ignorance. Sometimes people don't realize that what is the basis of, they just think it's a joke, it is not, but for somebody it is their life, right? So once I can laugh along with you, but if it is repetitive, then I need to correct it at some point in time, because then you are setting a power equation between the two people where you can always, and it is in a way of form of bullying. If happens repeatedly, it is technically bullying. So the bullying, if it is becoming bullying, it needs to be corrected at that point in time.
Thank you for that. Is there any other question from the students? While they think about it, I would like to ask you that if students do want to reach out and seek some guidance or information or help, or want to talk to someone, let's assume that they cannot talk to their peers or their teachers or their parents. Is there any external source somewhere where they could,
There are several
get clarity on
counselors.
things?
Yeah, there are several counselors, Kalpana, but if you are a child below 18 years of age, legally, you cannot be doing sex, gender, sexuality discussions without the consent of the parents. If the child is 18 and above, yes, they can seek, so effectively, if we are talking about adolescent children, we will need to keep parents informed. I think they can talk to the counselors, and I think I indicated that if the child talks to the counselor, then the counselor can bring in the parent and facilitate that conversation. But the child needs to be ready for that conversation to happen, or there should be a guardian who should be a legal guardian of the child who should be in the room, which is essential. And unfortunately, right now, because of the legal guidelines and because of POXO and all those issues which come in, this becomes essential, and it sometimes acts as a barrier, but it is also necessary that the parents know. And I also feel it is essential that the parents know, because children should uh, I feel children should also know that when they are stepping outside the house and are sexually active, or are getting more information about this, they should also guard themselves against any form of exploitation, sexual exploitation, or reaching out to people who may not be as sensitive as within these guarded spaces. So these are frameworks which are actually there to protect the interests of children or adolescents, and they should be respected. So I feel that either using the counselor route and using then the parental consent route, within the safe space becomes extremely
आ जाओ ऊपर.
Does anyone want to ask a question?
But I would like to just understand whether in SM Shetty, whether there has been a sex, gender, sexuality, workshop or a counseling session which has been organized for the teachers and for the counselors. Has that ever happened, or is there a need? Because if I think that would be a good place to start.
Okay. So we do have some kind of orientation every year actually.
Okay.
But I mean, it's not been really into in depth as such. I am not aware about what the counseling session is done. Liji ma'am, would you know that?
Yes, Kalpana. Actually, we have it in the counseling center. They do that. Other than that, we don't have anything else.
Because what we have done for several NGOs who work in this field of education in slum pockets as well as in other spaces is that we don't have a session with the students, but because of the age issue, but we at least sensitize the teachers and the counselors about those issues, so they are able to understand or probably be able to guide students if such cases do come within their set of students that they are training. So if you do feel, I can just put you onto the right resources for having those sessions for the teachers and the counselors.
One more thing on the legal standing and the legal rights that are available to the people. Could you tell us something about that?
So until 2018, we had Section 377, which technically was read down by the Supreme Court. And in terms of legal standing, the law does not necessarily recognize identity of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender. Though within the Constitution, you have a saying which says that non-discrimination on basis of sex, gender. So effectively, what the courts have argued is non-discrimination on basis of sex also basically extends to sexual orientation. But this is yet an argument. The government is very clear that the reading down of Section 377 was just about consensual relationships between adults. It had got nothing to do with identity politics, but this is yet a topic which is in the process of being discussed in the courts. As people are saying, and there are several petitions of legalizing marriage or between two people of the same sex, and there are several petitions which are going on. These conversations are yet going into the high courts and the Supreme Courts where they are arguing that. But as of now, there is no language within the Constitution which describes being gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. There is no such concept. We have only recently started inclusion of transgender people, where there are specific laws such as the NALSA law and then the Transgender Act, which is recognizing that transgender people need special rights, and their inclusion and their development becomes extremely essential. And that has already started. But besides the transgender individuals, there is no discussion around gay, lesbian, bisexual people as recognized identities within the Constitution. So we have a long way to go in terms of our both our Constitution and our legal system, some of which is archaic because it was adopted directly from the British. We have not updated our legal systems. Everything got updated in the UK and the US systems, but we yet continue to use the same legal system which was there in the British era.
So a change is needed very badly.
Correct.
Yeah.
And change happens along with society. Change can't be forced onto society. So we as a society also need to then accept the change in our midst for legal and lawyers to understand. So if we say non-discrimination, then even the courts understand that this is the ethic and the culture today of India, and we need to change then the law in line with that culture and the need of the people, right? Because we are a democracy, and at the end of the day, it then goes as per democratic standards of changes which are needed, both in law, which is done by our representatives sitting in parliament. And that is the reason the movement is slowly now reaching out to politicians and parliamentarians to tell them that these laws need to be changed.
It should start from the schools.
Yeah, and the schools will make also a, because when people say that this affects my life, otherwise it's just an academic discussion where we are just saying, oh, it affects some people's lives. Who are those people? Unless I stand up and say it affects my life, I am not able to exercise my rights as a citizen because of these laws. Nobody is going to take cognizance of that and change that law. And that is why it is necessary for the the citizens of India and the future voters of this country to know how these laws affect and what change that needs to happen. Right?
There is one more question, sir. This is regarding what would be an ideal age in which a person understands their sexuality. Like, if we say that in school, if you talk about it, it might be too early and they don't know what is what.
Yeah.
And maybe even so in, when they are freshers or in their undergraduate program. So
see,
when
we
I
were
mean,
all
what is
given
the...
sex education when we were in our 10th standards. I mean, but alternate sexuality was not explained at that point in time. So I think as a part of school curriculum, sex education needs to be given by the time you're 15 or 16, because that time you are at the adolescent stage. I do feel that alternate sexuality or should also be discussed at that point in time. However, I would say that let the legal age of 18 yet remain for you to be sure whether you really are, what your gender or sexuality is, because these are development periods, right? You may have children who will say, I think I'm gay, but then probably 2 years down the line they may say, no, and you should be having that kind of a zone to discover who you really are. So it's okay by 18 to be sure of what you are. I mean, I wouldn't force down. If a 13-14-year-old child comes to me and says, I think I'm gay, uh, i will I will not stop listening to them, but I will not take them seriously until they have gone through the whole process of life and figured it out for themselves. And it is not my business to tell them, yes, I think you are. No, your gender or your sexual orientation is determined by you. Nobody else can tell you what you should be. And that is extremely important, as a process. Not even the counselor should be telling somebody, you will have typically children who will come to you of, even in 18, 19 and say, this has happened to me in my life. Do you think I am gay? And I'm like, it's not for me to tell you. I'm going to ask you, do you think you are based on whatever information I've provided you? Because what identity you are comfortable with or you accept is something that you need to decide for yourself, not someone else for you. That is extremely important, because otherwise then it's manipulating somebody into thinking who they are or what their gender or their sexuality is. That would be counterproductive.
Thank you. There is one more question, which is, do you think creation of ally groups amongst the students would help create awareness about it?
Yeah, it would. And you should create a larger ally group, which is an anti-bullying ally group, so that, maybe any discrimination on basis of probably gender, sexuality, color of skin, probably even your size should be prevented in school. So I think within that spectrum, you can also take LGBT, as one of the parameters.
We do have an anti-ragging cell. Yeah,
Okay.
that is there.
So it can incorporate this. Yeah.
Yeah, like you said earlier that you don't know when it is a light joke that everybody is okay with, and when it turns into a more hurtful comment. So that's, I think, a thin line to draw. Whether that's a joke or whether that's a rude comment.
I think you should follow the simple rule that if the person who's been dragged objects to it and says, I don't like this, it should be respected. Everyone's sensitivity and the way one will relate to a particular joke is different. And I have no business telling who should be sensitive or who should not be sensitive. Now, I may be a little more sensitive because of various issues in my life. And, that one joke may not be acceptable to me. And if I say, I don't like this, please don't. And one should be empowered enough in a space to say, please don't say this again, I don't like it. And that should be respected. If it happens again after that, then it should tantamount to be harassment or bullying.
So, can you suggest something for our college to do? This is what I
would suggest a low-hanging fruit for you is to have a special session on understanding what I just explained in a more nuanced way to understand sex, gender, sexuality, and there are specific modules for that, so that both teachers as well as counselors understand these issues, and they also know the next steps in case a child does come to them and explains to them that they have these issues. They should know what are the next steps that they need to take, and if the child requires more hand holding, where are the referrals that they can make so that the child has a resource to do it.
Great. We will look forward to this.
And I can put you in terms of resource groups or people who actually conduct these sessions. Since I am connected with Humsafar Trust and many other, instructors, I can put you in touch with the right instructors who can come and do these sessions.
Absolutely great. Thank you.
I'll get in touch with you for that.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions, students or teachers? Okay, none as of now, but yeah.
Any questions, Kalpana? Any more? Anybody?
No. I think it's yeah. I've read out all the questions.
Great.
It was a great session. Small, beautiful, I must say.
Yeah, I kept it personal. I didn't keep a presentation for the simple reason that I wanted it to be personal and interactive. Thank you for all the questions asked. It was great answering them, and good relevant questions.
So I think on behalf of anybody else? Any IQAC member, if you can put the feedback form, then we can share it with sir also.
Yes. So that's what, ma'am, I was just going to ask you. So I have just put the link into the chat right now.
Sir, we will share the feedback with you so that it will be useful for you also. Just to know like how the session was.
Would love to know. Would love to know.
All the students who have joined and all the faculty members are also requested to fill the same.
Please do the honor for, like filling up the feedback form so that we will come to know we can improve ourselves.
And Dr. Santosh, also what I'd like to say is if today I just gave a very general overview of things. If you think there are any specific aspects which you want more insight and discussion, then we can have a more structured presentation with, all the details out there.
Sure.
But as an educator and somebody who knows your problems better than me, on a day-to-day basis, I think it would be better for you to understand that and let me know. I can help out with your way forward.
Sure. Thank you so much. And on behalf of Internal Quality Assurance Cell, I thank our management, our principal, for actually providing us this platform to invite Pallav Patankarji for the session. And sir, from the heart, I must say, like, it was a beautiful session. And for many, it may be an eye opener, although we have been in the field, we have been working throughout. So we know all this kind of problems well, but for the students, it must be really a good session because the kind of questions they asked shows it up. Like they really enjoyed the session. Thank you so much for taking out your time on your Alibag trip and coming here for us and doing this for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I thank our Vice Principal Sandesha Shetty for his presence and support for all of us. And Kalpana, thank you so much for bringing him over here and then giving us this, wonderful talk on behalf of him. I thank all IQAC team for doing all the work from top to bottom, I can say, like on link and all those work, and all my colleagues and all the wonderful student participants for being here today. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.